Good day. It was really quite cold this morning. We expected it to be cold this morning. We even had a few flurries of snow in London, which, is unusual anyway, but for April. And when I was coming down here, I stopped and I chatted to somebody for maybe half an hour. And by the time I got to the plot, my hands were really cold. But now the sun is out, the sky is blue, the clouds are gorgeous, and it's quite warm. And I've got this fleece on, and I've been strimming. And I have to say that I feel a bit overdressed at the moment. But better to take a layer off than not have a layer to put on. So yeah, I've been strimming. That's the first not the first strim of the year, because I've already strimmed, as you know, but it's the first major growing strim. And of course, being a bit of a wildlife freak, I've been avoiding the dandelions and the daisies and the lungwort because they're flowering at the moment and are a brilliant source of food for bees, which we want. So yeah, I've been avoiding those, so it may not be as neat as it normally might look after a strim. But you know what, that's not the point. The point is just to keep things under control and let wildlife enjoy what we're doing here as well, because we are in their space. We're borrowing this space. It's a wildlife space. That's what I say about the foxes all the time. People say, oh, well, you shouldn't have foxes. Well, it's their land. We're just borrowing it. Even if next year will be 100 years of our allotment, we're still borrowing it. And now look, a cloud has gone over the sun. Oh, now it's coming back out. It's funny how that changes because of the roof here on the shed being made of perspex. So I've got my goggles. I've been strimming with my goggles, and I always like to just brush the path here just to neaten it up a little bit. I'll most probably come back later and rake up the clippings that are lying about, or I might just leave them there. I'm not going to do a lot today. It's Easter Sunday. I felt I had quite a busy week last week and the week before. There's some planning that I want to do, and I need to do my what we're sowing and growing in April video, which I'll most probably do tomorrow. I've got the allotment tour video to do for April, which again I'll most probably do tomorrow. So you'll see me on YouTube a bit this week. But yeah, I think I'm just going to... Oh, dandelions. This is something. Dandelions. Dandelions, as I say, are a great source of food as a flower for bees and other pollinators. When they go over, that is obviously when we get the dandelion seed head, which is just glorious. If you're concerned about dandelions spreading through that seed, the really best thing to do is to let the dandelion flower, and then once it's flowered and starts going over and going to seed where it will close up and the seeds will form, pick the heads off at that point. Deadhead your dandelions, in effect. Let them flower, let them enrich the wildlife that we need on our plots. And then when they're going over and they're going to seed, just bend over, take the head off, and then put that head into a compost bin. At that point, the seed won't have developed enough to be able to germinate and form a new plant. Once the dandelion seed head is fully open, the seeds are then viable and will blow away. As we know, we used to do it as kids, didn't we? Holding that and then going 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and blowing to see what time of day it was. But yeah, at that point, the seed is viable. So when it blows away at that point, it can land and just catch in a blade of grass and then bring on germination for another plant next year. So if you're worried about dandelions, don't be. Let them flower and then pick the heads off before they go to seed. Right, I am going to leave it there. I'm going to go home and have some soup and maybe some cheese on toast. And I'll see you again tomorrow for another segment of A Week at the Plot. Bye. Good day. The allotments are sort of between us and that crane. You can see some chimney pots just above the grass, and they're just behind that. If we go over there, the big buildings behind those trees, that's Ealing Broadway. And this is called Warren Farm. It used to be a sports ground and then was going to be taken over for development by QPR as their training ground. That fell through last year, and it's now hopefully going to become a nature reserve, a new park for London, more lungs for the city. Fingers crossed. It's an amazing space. Over there, I'm told, is the Sultan of Brunei's place, and over there is Heathrow. So yeah, there we are, and there is Richard, and behind him are some old, what do you call it, that's where the teams used to go and change. Ground, isn't it? Yeah, changing rooms and things. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Morning. Bye. Good day. And what a cold day it is. So last night we had a really heavy frost, and it was heavy. All the cars were covered in frost. Our flat area on the top of our dining room was really white this morning, and that was expected. So I did protect certain things in the on the plot, and also a couple of things at home. And of course, anything that potentially, any seedlings that would have been bitten by that are actually at home, so all of those are fine. It says it got down to minus 2.5 degrees Celsius in the shed last night, and I would have thought that means it will have been a bit, maybe a degree cooler outside. But there isn't any, I don't think it was bitterly cold for a long period of time. I mean, it's cold today. It's saying in here it's 8 degrees. I think with the wind chill, when you're in the wind outside, it's sort of nearer 2 or 3 degrees. And Richard and I did go for a walk this morning, a different way down the canal. And with blue skies and clouds, it was actually really pleasant in the sun. But when the clouds came over fully, and we've been sort of overcast mainly since about 10:30, it is cold. Yeah, it's cold. But I've looked at the long-term weather forecast for the next month, and it doesn't look as though we get any heavy cold spell between now and the middle of May, which would be fantastic because that's usually our last late frost date. So I'm down here today. I'm doing a few things. I'm just checking to see if anything needs any water. That wind is there, and of course it's drying the topsoil quite significantly. So I'm just putting my fingers down around the asparagus and the peas and things like that to check they've got moisture down at their roots, which they all do. I've also brought our 2 tiny aubergine plants down. So of all the sowings we did 2 sowings. We still only have 2 plants. This one is sort of looking okay. This one here is looking a bit sorry for itself. But I'm going to pot these on just like I did with the peppers the other day. And these are going to be going back home with me. They need that little bit more heat than down here in the polytunnel or down here in the shed. One thing that I did notice, and I was really chuffed about it, or 2 things that I noticed. I was a bit worried about the tadpoles. I mean, I know they're used to it. Well, those tadpoles aren't, but the life of a tadpole, if you like, is used to cold weather. And I know that our washing up bowl pond is sunk in the ground, so that'll give some protection. But I did wake up at 2 o'clock this morning and see that it was quite cold outside and thought, oh, I hope the tadpoles are okay. And thankfully they are. What I have also done, because that is covered in a mesh to stop the foxes drinking from it, they've got the other pond they can drink from. No, not really, because it's covered in mesh. Because we're not having a lot of rain at the moment, things out there are drying up. The paths are drying up, as you saw on a week at the plot last week when we were out at Aston Rowant. There are cracks appearing, and they're appearing here too. I put some water, some tap water, into a watering can about a week ago. Now, I always thought that if you left a watering can or sort of tub of water open for 24, 48 hours, the chlorine would gas off and anything else would gas off. But Jays did mention last year when I said this, that actually it's better to leave it for longer, for 4 days or even more. So I've had a large watering can sat open to the air so that anything in there can gas off. And I'm going to use that watering can water to top up the tadpoles, because it doesn't look as though we're due any significant rain. And of course, even with the wind, that water is evaporating, and I obviously need to keep that little pond topped up. So I'm going to be doing that. And what I did want to show you is something else about our peas. Let me just show you that before I say goodbye. So in the middle there, hopefully you can see we have an Oregon sugar pod germinating. And in fact, as I look, there's another one. Can you see in the middle there? And I've just seen, I think, another one. Oh, can you see it? Here. And if I go along, I've just seen another one. Oh, but I can't see it now. Oh, you see it just there. That's another one. Oh, look. Can you see that one? There. So our Oregon sugar pod have germinated. Those are the direct sown ones. And then I'm moving with my knee pad. If we come here, can you see in there? In the middle there and in the middle there, those are our Traindriver mountain range that we direct sowed about 10 days ago. Yeah, everything's looking fine, though I have noticed over here, I think a slug has got to that one, look. But yeah, we can expect that, I suppose. But yeah, really pleased. Let's go under there to see these two germinating, and the Oregon sugar pod too. Fingers crossed for the others we've put in. Right, I'll leave it there for today and see you again tomorrow. Bye. Good day, and I'm so pleased to have got that job done. If you watched our allotment tour, our April allotment tour, you will have seen I mentioned about that plant, the snow in summer. I put it in 2 years ago and it's a fantastic plant. It has beautiful flowers in about June, which look like a carpet of snow. And that silvery green foliage is just gorgeous, but it does spread. It's a ground hugging, spreading plant. That's what it does. And I don't want it to spread any further into the bed. And in fact, as I said in the tour, I want to cut it back. Now, what I have noticed is that a few people who say they would like some, they're not going to be around. There's 3 plot holders. They're not going to be around till next week. And 2 other plot holders that have said that they would like some aren't here today. So what I've done is I've basically treated it a bit like turf. So I've taken it out with a spade and I've put it into a gravel tray. And at the bottom of the gravel tray, I have put spent compost. So it can now sit in that gravel tray for hopefully as long as is needed before it gets transferred to other people. So I thought that was the best bet. I haven't done this before, but it seems to make sense to me because it gets the job done that I want done, which is effectively clearing it. but it also means that we'll have a longevity of life within that tray to be able to portion it up and give it to other people. And maybe even some of that could go to the community gardens and a lady along our road who gives me quite a few plants. I think it would look lovely in one of her beds and she would like it. So that's what I've done. I'll keep it moist. We're due some rain, I think, tomorrow and Saturday. So fingers crossed for that. However, it is still quite dry. And with the peas having germinated yesterday, I've given them an additional watering. And of course, we put other beans, broad beans in, and we put three other types, in fact, of peas in a few days ago, or the back end of last week, I think it was. So I want to ensure that the top of the soil stays moist. So I've done some more watering. But as I said the other day, when I put my hand down below the soil, an inch or so below the soil, even though the top of the soil is bone dry, down below there's still quite a lot of moistness, which is what we want. You know, you don't want it to be dredging wet down there. That's a term my dad used to use. Dredging wet is when you try and pull something up, but it just it's so wet it just goes everywhere. Gosh, suddenly pulling back a term from Dad's boating days, or shipping days, not boating days, when he was a docker at St Peterport in Guernsey. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there now, and I'll see you again for another segment of A Week at the Plot tomorrow. Bye. Good day. And it was an early start for us today. We had an Enterprise Car Club car, so exactly the same as the Zip cars we have been using, but from Enterprise. And we went up to Coombe Hill, which is another of our favourite walks, and spent a good few hours up there. It was just lovely. It was quite chilling because when we sat down, the breeze really got to us, and it was quite cold with the breeze. But it was lovely. And then we went for a little drive around on our way back through a few places that we haven't been before. And then we popped to the garden centre. Though, truth to tell, when we got to the garden centre, there were so many cars in the car park. We both felt a bit anxious about it. So we went to Homebase instead and got some petunias there. They were outside, so all we needed to do was grab them, go and pay for them in a queue that moved very quickly, and then bring them back home. So that's what we did. And I've done a few things at home, a few bits of work at home, had a few calls. And I wanted to come down because I've seen some weeds in the tomato bed that I said a few days ago, maybe in the plot tour, that I've left it open so that I can see what perennial weeds come up, because then I can put my trowel in and take up the root of that, and I can see some couch grass in there. So that's what I'm going to do in a minute. But I've checked things in the polytunnel, everything's fine there. The peas that have just germinated are doing okay. Gosh, that was a red kite that just flew over the shed very, very low. They're not usually that low, or not, you know, they're that low when they're going down and taking carrion, but not flying like that. Anyway, where was I? What was I saying? Oh, I was in the polytunnel, wasn't I? Yeah. And the peas have germinated. So I was just checking on them. And then I came into my shed and look, another book. My Cool Allotment, an inspirational guide to stylish allotments and community gardens. So that's from a fellow plot holder. So I will be having a read of that. And he's also left me some notes as well, some thoughts, because as you may know, the horses that we had, the ponies that we had here, have gone to a family farm in Lincolnshire, and they're doing very well, which is absolutely great. And that area is likely to be turned into further growing space. But we're thinking of maybe how to do something a bit differently over there and do more mini plots, not as many as the community gardens, which are only 3 meters by 3 meters, so 9 square meters, but maybe something like 20 square meters or 16 square meters, something like that. And I've asked various people for their thoughts, and fantastically, the guy that's lent me this book, his thoughts, which he's put down in 2 sheets of A4 paper, align very much with my thoughts and the thoughts of the charity as well, which is great. So yeah, there's some work going on at the pub at the moment. You can mostly hear that drilling noise. So I'm just going to leave it there for today, because there is a bit of noise out there and I do want to pull up those weeds. So I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to go and pull up those weeds. Bye. Just easing it out, and you get the whole root. Good day. In front of us we have the 5 dahlias that we put away, I think the back end of September, October time. So we turn them upside down to hopefully allow the moisture in them to drain away and also evaporate out of the top, and have left them upside down like this since. This is on the recommendation of one of our fellow plot holders, who does this each year with her dahlia tubers that are in pots. And what I'm going to do now is turn them the right way up. And the way I'm going to do that is simply by putting another gravel tray. This gravel tray, as you can see, has got holes in it. I'm going to put another gravel tray on top, and then just flip it over like you might do with an omelette if you were going to turn over an omelette on a plate. So let me pop the gravel tray that I've got in my hand on top, and I'll turn it over, and then we'll see if there's any growth. I'm not expecting there to be any, but yeah, it's always a bit exciting, isn't it? Now I'm going to turn that all upside down. Well, certainly it has dried out, because that's an awful lot lighter than it was when I did the reverse a few months ago. Oh, I can feel, yeah, I can feel tubers. Yeah, they haven't gone mushy. Well, that's a first for me. Usually when I've kept dahlia tubers over winter, they've either gone mushy and frozen or just seem to have been or disappeared. But sticking my finger into these, I can feel the tubers are there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these into the polytunnel overnight, because I think we're going to get down to about 2 degrees. And in fact, I'll most probably keep these in the polytunnel for another couple of weeks. But what my fellow plot holder said is, once you've turned them the right way up, don't water them for 10 days to a fortnight. I have no idea why, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. And we'll see in a few months' time whether these start growing again. Right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you again tomorrow for another segment of A Week at the Plot. Bye. Good day. I've just been sieving the soil in this area and raking it. Where we sunk the mint container into the ground, there was, I would say, maybe an eighth of a cubic meter of soil that came out of that hole, and I've put it onto this bed. It will make this bed a bit more of a loamy soil, which I think is good, but there were quite a few big stones in it, as you saw. So I've sieved those out and raked it. What I have noticed is over here, our buddleia. Look at how that cold snap has affected the buddleia. I go in, you can see how the top leaves have fallen over, and that, I'm sure, is due to the dryness of the soil and also that cold snap that we had, that we're just at the end of, hopefully, at the moment. Last year, this whole buddleia fell forward, and I pushed it back because it was actually right over here. And I think we need to add some soil in there. So I'm going to put some soil, and then those stones that I've just taken out, I'm going to put those on top there to stabilize that a little bit. But it's interesting that if we come around this way, some have really succumbed. Look at this one here. That's really succumbed to the cold. Yet these here are absolutely upright and fabulous. So I'm just going to see how these rather wizened ones at the top do, because if they just die back, which I've got a feeling they're going to do, I will clip this back a little bit more. If we come down here, look, we've got a branch here, this one. You know, I can cut it back. I can cut it back to here if I want to, where these leaves are not affected, or I could cut this whole one off here and just let this one grow. But yeah, choices to make. But this is what happens in gardening. You come across things that you don't expect. A bit like our tadpoles in our pond. That was a joyous one. Quite a lot of tidying to do. Quite a lot of thinking to do. I've just tidied up our sunken washing up bowl pond. But today's just going to be a bit of a pottering day. Just tidying and pottering. I still need to sort out various beds. Still need to decide where certain things are going. And if we don't have the rain that has been promised, I'll certainly need to do some watering. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now. It's clouding up a little bit. When the sun's out, it's warm. When the sun goes in, it's not. Let's hope we have a later afternoon bit of sunshine. Because I'm going to leave it here now, go home, have a coffee, edit the full week of A Week at the Plot, and upload it for tomorrow morning. So I will say goodbye. Have a good week. Bye.